Which freshman football players will make an impact for TCU football this upcoming season and TCU basketball? The men survive on the road in Stillwater, and the women really cool and courageous effort tonight coming off that two forfeits. They beat UCF. That and more coming up next. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox, coming to you not live. We're recording this on a Tuesday evening. I'm sorry I missed a show on Tuesday. My explanation for that is I have a leak in my roof. I've got damage to my ceiling. I was able to at least get somebody out today to identify what the problem was. Unfortunately, we've had all kinds of rain here in Central Texas over the last few days, and they're not going to be able to really get the job done until this rain clears out. So hopefully it'll clear out tomorrow and I can get somebody out to get the job done. But anyway, I was sort of running around doing some different things, trying to figure that out. Tried not to flood my house yesterday. So that was the reason as to why flood my house is an overstatement, but it was anxiety inducing. And that was among my day job and other things. I just didn't get around to recording an episode, but we're back to our regular schedule today. TCU basketball, they knock off Oklahoma State. The men, they go on the road in Stillwater, get a victory. The women with an impressive 66-60 win over UCF, shorthanded. But I was going to start today with an audience question. I've been doing that lately. Not really a rhyme or reason to it, except you guys are asking good questions. And again, this one comes from Tanner McKinney, or it was really more of a statement, but it brought up a good topic that I wanted to explore here. He said, I think TCU needs to get more freshmen involved, especially high recruits, and not make the same mistake we did with Cordell Russell. Yeah, that's an intriguing thought. I would say, the thing with Cordell was confusing at times. I understood the word about that was he wasn't picking up the offense. He didn't seem to have a great feel for what he was supposed to do. And I mean, hey, like practice is where you prove that you're trustworthy to play in the games. The thing to me that was confusing, though, is he's such a good athlete. And I just felt like with all the struggles TCU was having on offense, what was the harm in finding some creative ways to give him the ball? I mean, you can get him out there and say, hey, let's throw a fade. Like, let's run a little stop route. Let's get you the ball in space, see what you can do. And TCU just never really explored that. And so he moves on and hits the transfer portal, and they lose him in the offseason. And that's the tension now that every school is dealing with, which is you get highly touted freshmen on campus, and if you don't play them immediately, and of course now, red shirting is kind of a new world because it's not like it used to be where if they play any snaps, they can't red shirt. Guys can play in 4 different games. But if they don't get enough time on the field in their mind, then it's really easy for them to just move on and leave. And the other side of that is TCU got Berlin James from Notre Dame for a similar reason. He didn't really see the field for the Fighting Irish last year as a true freshman, so he ends up playing or coming to TCU in the transfer portal. Now, the fascinating thing to me about this high school class, because I agree with you to a point, Tanner, I think you have to find a way to get those guys involved. Now, I mean, you can't sacrifice the good of the team for that. You can't be so stubborn on that belief that you're just like, even if the player's not totally ready or is not displaying great attitudes, not doing what we asked them to do, we got to find a way to get them on the field just to keep them happy. But I do think, it behooves you to find ways, especially with offensive guys, to get them touches and get them the ball. Now, the fascinating thing about this class is some of their high-rated guys, I don't see a super clear path for them to get on the field. Like Kyle Baker is their highest-rated player, according to 247 Sports, the wide receiver from Boundsboro. The first uphill battle he's going to face is he's not an early enrollee, so he's not going to go through spring ball. So he'll be a little behind the 8 ball and learning the offense. The other thing is, when I was running down the depth chart yesterday, I mean, I hope that he pops in camp and is impressive, but I'm not seeing like just a plug-and-play type of spot for him. I think outside and inside receiver, at least with the 2 deep, they're in pretty solid shape. Now, hopefully he gets in there and shows some great athleticism and shows some flashes, and he forces his way onto the field. But it's been a while since TCU had a freshman wide receiver make an impact. I mean, Quentin Johnston did it in that COVID-shortened season, which should have told us a lot about who Quentin is. I know he had a tough rookie year for the Chargers, but the fact that he didn't enroll early either, which it wouldn't have mattered because I guess the pandemic hit and spring practice was canceled, but he didn't enroll early. He was playing basketball at Temple High School, came in with limited practice time like everybody else because of the pandemic. Now, maybe that kind of evened the scales for him. But anyway, in that limited practice time, did enough that they put him on the field immediately. He scored the first touchdown of the season in that Iowa State game and had a really good year for the Frogs. But that's the last freshman wide receiver that really came in and made a huge impact for TCU. I know Jordan Hudson, like, I think we kind of overstated, and this is going to make me sound like I'm a hater because it's at SMU now. Sometimes I think we overstated how much Jordan was a part of that team 2 years ago. Like, he was definitely part of the team, and he played significant snaps, especially towards the end of the year. But it wasn't like he was hauling in 5 catches a game. I mean, he was used sparingly and made some plays and clearly, like, worked his way into the starting lineup throughout the season, which was impressive with as much talent they had in that wide receiver room. But, I mean, it wasn't like he was playing 70 snaps each and every week. But when I look at the guys that are coming in, I mean, I think it's going to be tough for any of these offensive linemen, especially since a lot of them project projects down the road to come in and play right away. Guys like Julian Knox, who are great athletes, don't really have a position though yet. I think Julian's going to play defensive back. Now, one guy that's going to make an impact is Kyle Limmerman because he's going to be your starting kicker. I mean, he's going to be that guy that plays kicking and kicking field goals for you. But I imagine that's probably not the first person you thought of or the person you had in mind when you were talking about impact players as a freshman. So when I was running down the list, the person that jumped out to me, and I talked a little bit about this on Monday, but I think it's the perfect combination of timing and just opportunity to play, is Nate Palmer from Decatur, the running back, who's a 4-star in some services, 3-star in others, 5'10", 185, and was used a lot of different ways in high school. So it wasn't always just your traditional single back, like tote the rock 20 times. I mean, they gave him the rock a lot, but they also used him in the passing game. And because there's such a wide open situation at the running back position right now for TCU, we assume Cam Cook's going to be the starter. Trey Sanders played some last year, mainly was a short yardage back. Trent Battle's a guy that has flashed at times, but hasn't really had a consistent role. So I think Nate Palmer might have the clearest path to making an impact. Now, Haas Haney, I believe he'll start the year third on the depth chart. I've mentioned before, maybe that's a guy that they could use in some special packages, right? Like, hey, use that athleticism of his and like let him run the ball, let him do different things, and obviously you could throw out those formations too. But I don't know. I don't get the sense that's going to be like a main staple of the offense. But Nate Palmer is a guy that I feel like could come in and make something happen right away. So I see your point, Tanner. I mean, I would continue to say, like, you can't totally cater what you're doing to young freshmen just with the idea in mind of, well, I have to play them a certain amount of snaps or they're not going to stick around, and that's not acceptable. But I do agree with you. Like, if you're going to bring in highly rated players, if you're going to bring in players you believe in, you have to give them a reason to stick around. And part of that's relationship building. But another huge part of that is just playing time. Because honestly, it's so easy to move on. It's so easy to leave now that guys are just like, well, if I'm not getting an opportunity here, then I'll just go elsewhere because I can hit the portal and I'll have immediate eligibility. Now, I think that's a short-sighted mindset in a lot of cases, because if you didn't see the field, at one school and then you go to another one, depending on where you're going, are you going to get lost in the shuffle again? It's not just an absolute guarantee that you're going to step on campus right away and be a starter. But I understand the thought process of like, well, I'll just see if there's other opportunities elsewhere. With this freshman class, I don't see a ton of guys who I think are going to be either ready to play right away or at their specific position are going to have much of an opening to play right away going into the 2024 season. And somebody else talked about Trent Battle. Jared said, I still don't understand why they don't use Trent Battle more. He looks good every snap. I hope the running backs are Cook and Battle. Yeah, I mean, I've been a proponent of Trent Battle. I think I've said this before, but I remember after the amazing season where they won the playoff game he was one of my X Factor guys coming into this past year. And I looked at the stats and I was like, surely Trent had like big numbers, or not big numbers, but I just thought in my mind, I was like, he made an impact. He was somebody who played a lot, and he only had like 100 and something yards, like 107 yards receiving. And I was just flabbergasted by that. But I think a big part of that was he showed up big in big moments. So it felt like his impact was sometimes more far-reaching than it showed on the stat sheet. But at the end of the day, he was kind of used sparingly. I thought he ran the ball really well against Colorado when he was given an opportunity, towards the end of that game when Amani Bailey was dealing with cramps. But that's also Colorado defense that didn't really hold up the rest of the year. And, but after that, he didn't really get a lot of opportunities carrying the football. It just doesn't seem like they think he's an every down type of running back, but maybe this year is the year that changes to a certain extent. Okay, when we come back, TCU basketball, they survive and they beat Oklahoma State tonight. They get to 3-3 in conference play. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. FanDuel got a deal going on right now. Any $5 bet. You go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. I'm going to put that up here for our YouTube audience. FanDuel.com/lockedon. You put down a $5 bet. You get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. College basketball happening every night. NFL conference title weekend coming up on Sunday. FanDuel is a place to go. It's a place to bet. They also have an app that's super easy to use. You can bet on traditional like money lines, just straight up against the spread, or you can do parlays, you can do prop bets. It's all there for you with a tap of the finger at the FanDuel app or at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sponsor of the Locked On Network and official betting partner of the NFL. It's where the game starts. Again, $5 bet, one $5 bet, get you $150 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com/lockedon. I'm going to talk about the TCU women in segment 3, but as I'm recording this, my friend Matt Mosley sent me a text message. Looks like Mark Campbell is leading. He's on SportsCenter right now, talking about how Frogs forfeited 2 games because of all those injuries. Madison Connor was out tonight with a knee injury. She's been their best scorer all year long. And they came out and they beat UCF. An impressive win, and one that, ultimately – they're 2-6 in conference play. I think UCF is the worst team in the league. And so it's going to be an uphill battle from here on out. But just from an emotional standpoint, what a victory. And great job of Mark Campbell and his coaching staff rallying the team. And he said after the game they made some adjustments on the fly that I thought were interesting and really good as well. But we'll talk about the TCU men right now as they took down Oklahoma State and Stillwater 74-69. Frogs are now 3-3 in conference play. And I'm going to try to live by one of my mottos here on the show, which is we don't apologize for wins on Locked On Horned Frogs. Borrowed that mantra from Bob Sturm, who has done radio in Dallas for a long time at the Ticket. But especially on the road, you find a way to get a victory any way you can do it, right? Oklahoma State has played teams tough at home this year. They took K-State to the wire on the road, actually, on Saturday. I know they played Baylor tough. That game went into overtime and Stillwater to open conference play. But what bothered me tonight, and what has been just a consistent theme with this group now, slow starts. They were down by 17 about midway through the first half. And, some things, like some uncharacteristic things were happening. Oklahoma State was shooting 62%, which is pretty unheard of. They were hitting a lot of threes. Now, TCU was also getting beat on just back cut after back cut, just playing lazy defense. And TCU couldn't hit anything. And they went through one of their typical scoring droughts, and that put them behind the 8 ball. Now, the Frogs rallied. They cut the lead to 4 at halftime. But I don't understand just the constant issue with getting out of the gates and playing well. I guess not constant, but the last 2 games it's been a problem. It's like tonight, this should have been desperation mode. Let's bring the energy. Let's go for it. Like, this is a huge game. We got to win it. Got to get back to 500 in conference play before you go on the road to play Baylor this weekend. And, the energy and effort weren't horrible, but it was just not really there the way Oklahoma State was playing. But to TCU's credit, they crawled back in. They actually took a 3-point lead early in the second half on an Emmanuel Miller 3. Then they inexplicably give up an 8-0 run. The Jekyll and Hyde with this team is pretty amazing. But they fought back again, found a way to win this ball game down the stretch. And I think the big positive is they won a game where a lot of their best players just didn't play well. I mean, Trey Tennyson had one of his worst shooting nights of the season, 2 of 9 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3, only 5 points. Jameer Nelson Jr. has just gone out of sight. I mean, only 3 points in 16 minutes, 1 of 3 from the field. You know, Jacoby Cole still tries to work his way back into the lineup. He only had 2 points in 12 minutes. The bench as a whole, he's had a tough night, except for Xavier Cork, who had some, good finishes around the rim. He benefited from Emmanuel Miller going off. Now, the big positives from an individual performance standpoint in this ball game, Avery Anderson was fantastic. Avery Anderson revenge game tonight, as he is a former Oklahoma State Cowboy. 15 points on 6 of 9 shooting. Also made some really good passes, especially late in that ball game. Had 4 assists. Ran the offense well when he was out there. He's their best point guard at the moment. Now, they ran Tennyson out there and kind of let him run point for about the first 5 or 10 minutes of that ball game. And there were mixed results. But I think Avery is the best at running the offense and knowing when to get his own shot, when to pass the ball, and he just had an outstanding game, both offensively and defensively. Emmanuel Miller was his usual consistent self, 21 points, 8 of 15 from the field. Now, the thing that killed me about Emmanuel's game tonight, some critical missed free throws. Missed the front end of a 1-and-1 with like 3 minutes left when they could have extended the lead. Also shot 1 of 2 from the line like late in that ball game, but he did make one to finally give them a 2-possession advantage. He was working down low, getting his shots. His jumper wasn't really on tonight. He did hit that 1-3, but overall kind of struggled from the mid-range, which is usually where he lives. But he did a nice job being aggressive, getting to the hoop, finishing around the rim. And just overall was a great player again tonight. Micah Peavy, also a bright spot in the victory, 16 points on 7 of 11 shooting. Micah has his limitations. He's not an offensive player that can score at all 3 levels, but he was super decisive tonight, working towards the rim, not settling for jumpers, finding a way to get to the hole and finish. And I'll tell you what, he had a shot. He had like a fadeaway shot in the post, in the paint, against Iowa State late in that ballgame that he almost hit. But when he took the shot, I was like, oh, man, that's not good offense. Like, that's not a high percentage look for TCU. Micah Peavy shooting fadeaway jumpers, in the paint. But he hit one of those tonight. He's got a good feel for kind of how to maneuver his body when he's near the goal to shield shot blockers and give himself an open look. And you saw that on display. Now, late in the ball game, they had a possession. They were up 3, and he was, possession was kind of stalling out late in the shot clock. He did make a good decisive drive, got fouled, but missed the front end of a 1-and-1. And then Oklahoma State had a chance to go tie it, but thankfully they missed the shot. And, it's just one of those things. I don't know. I tweeted about this during the game. I don't understand. I remember watching Trent Johnson's teams back in the day, and they were so horrible from the free throw line. And I was just like, man, this is rough. Like, at least when they hired Jamie Dixon, one of my first thoughts was, well, at least they'll be good from the line now. Because Jamie's a good coach, and surely his teams will be able to shoot well from the free throw line. But my goodness, every TCU team I've ever watched has just had issues, wild issues, scoring from the charity stripe. They were 11 of 18 tonight. Some critical missed free throws down the stretch. But that being said, they found a way to win. I will say this about Jacoby Coles. Struggled again offensively, but he did make a nice move. I can't remember who kicked him the ball, but he got an open look from 3 on the wing, and he had a defender closing out on him. He was able to shot fake, put the ball on the deck, get to the rim, and kind of maneuver his body in a way where he wasn't out of control. He didn't get called for a charge. He laid it in, and then later in crunch time, they got him the ball in the high post, and they ran kind of a high-low 2-man game with him and Emmanuel, and he made a really nice entry pass to Miller, and Miller caught it and banked it in, and that extended the lead. So all that was good. I don't have a great answer for why they're struggling so much to start games, but, you find a way to win on the road. It's all you can do, and that's what they did on Tuesday. So now you're 3-3 in conference play. You go on the road to play Baylor. Baylor's kind of struggling right now. They've lost 2 in a row. We'll see what they do in their midweek game. But bottom line is, they are especially in this new building, they're tough. They're just a tough team to beat. Got really good guard play. So you can't turn the ball over. Got to be effective. I think the biggest issue with this team right now is in crunch time, there's just not a go-to scorer. I think Miller, like they like running ISO stuff for Emmanuel on the left side, especially where they kind of put him in the high post and try to let him go to work. I just feel like he doesn't always get high percentage looks. And then your guard play just hasn't been great. And so the team has struggled. But overall, good effort, good victory, and you take the win. You just hope that you can keep stacking up victories as the conference schedule goes on. TCU women's basketball, they also get a victory. That's coming up next year on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. So Mark Campbell's squad, if you're wondering how did they fill out the roster after postponing 2 games, they said they were going to add some walk-ons. So they added 4 walk-ons. They had Sarah Sylvester, who's actually on a volleyball scholarship. She's a middle blocker for the Frogs volleyball team. And they're letting her play basketball for the remainder of the season. And then they added 3 students as well. Piper Davis from Boise, Idaho. And it's funny, like reading these bios, you're like, man, these girls can ball. She led her team to the Idaho High School Association 5A state championship in 2022. She started every game. She had a career high of 22 points in the state championship round. And she becomes the second member of her family to play Division I basketball. Her father, Jared Davis, played for Gonzaga in the late 80s and early 90s. Ella Hamlin at Granbury, she scored over 1,500 points in her career. She was District Offensive Player of the Year in 2022 and 23. She averaged 18 points a game and had 42 points, a career high, against Lovelady High School her senior year. And then Micaiah Moore, a 5'7" sophomore from Brownsboro, who led the Barrettes to their first ever girls basketball state championship as a senior in 2022. She was named the MVP of the state tournament after their triumph, and she tallied over 1,000 points in her career as a 4-year varsity player. So, hey, like some small school players, obviously, but still, they found some students who had really decorated and outstanding high school careers, and so that's going to be the team for the rest of the season. Now, tonight they played 8 players, and Sarah Sylvester, the volleyball player, actually played 1 minute, but she only played 1 minute. So really, they had a 7-person rotation tonight. And it's going to be tough to win games like that, but they hung in there down the stretch. They came out on fire. Sydney Harris was hitting some threes. She had a good game overall, but you could tell the energy was up, right? I mean, I'm sure they were excited to play. Probably just felt good to be back on the floor. And so I think that was a big factor in the first quarter. By halftime, their lead was down to 2. They were trailing at the end of the third quarter, but they just battled back. Victoria Flores had a really good night. She made some big buckets towards the end. Only 7 points, but had a couple big shots at the end of that ball game. Aaliyah Robertson had 17 points. She's only been averaging 7 on the year, but she had a really good day. And her and Sydney Harris both found ways to be effective inside. Now, Harris hit a couple threes also. But Campbell said after the game, they've changed their offense up. They were running spread pick and rolls to begin the year. With all the injuries, they're running 5-out sets now. So essentially no 5 players out on the perimeter. Like there's nobody playing inside. And so you got to find space and find ways to get easy buckets. And Harris and Robertson did that. Frogs played really good defense, holding UCF to 60 points. They had some big buckets down the stretch. And I'll tell you what, Sarah Sylvester came in there with a minute left in the third quarter, and she definitely looked a little lost on offense. Like you could tell, she didn't know exactly what she was supposed to do. Of course, she joined the team like a few days ago. But defensively, she was guarding one of UCF's post players, and she did a really good job fronting her, denying the ball. I mean, she was active. She didn't allow them to get an easy entry pass, and they got to stop on that. Well, I don't think they got to stop on that possession. They ended up hitting a 3, but it wasn't anything that she did. I mean, she was in there. They were trying to work against her, and she just wouldn't let UCF get the ball into the post. So, hey, that's a big deal. But, I mean, bottom line is they have now surpassed their Big 12 win total from last year with 2 wins. And to come off the forfeit situation, sign a few walk-ons, and go beat UCF, even though the Knights are winless in conference play, still, that's significant. That's a big deal. And Mark Campbell and his team should be proud and happy with the way they performed on Tuesday. That'll do it for Locked On Horned Frogs. I'm Steven Simcox, your host. It's your team and we do it here every day. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcast.